update the latest information. We are QTN.
Since the commencement of the conflict in Ukraine, Bakhmut has emerged as an immensely symbolic focal point. Today, we aim to provide you with an overview of recent developments in this strategic location over the past 2 weeks. Following a brief respite in Bakhmut, Ukrainian forces redirected their efforts towards Russian cities and the southern front in Ukraine. This area has now become the epicenter of intense hostilities, drawing significant attention from both sides of the conflict. Over the past 24 hours alone, there have been almost 30 skirmishes between the Ukrainian Defense Forces and Russian occupation troops along the front line in Bakhmut, reflecting the high stakes in this region. In the Bakhmut region, Ukrainian fighters have successfully held their ground against the enemy in the northeast direction. Furthermore, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have continued their offensive operations to the south of Bakhmut, making notable territorial gains along the established borders. Notably, Kovalov, a military spokesperson, highlighted the failures of the enemy's offensive operations in the Karivka and Marinka sectors of the Donetsk region after an extended and hard-fought struggle. Of utmost significance, Ukrainian troops have regained control of the Bakhmut route, a pivotal lifeline that is crucial for the invaders. This development marks a significant setback for the Russian occupation forces. Additionally, the Ukrainian Defense Forces have successfully ousted the Russian Federation from the village of Kaka on Bakhmut's southern flank. The momentum of the Ukrainian armed forces in the Bakhmut region remains steady, with ongoing operations. Remarkably, more than half of the village of Keska has now been reclaimed, further underscoring the determination and resilience of the Ukrainian forces in their efforts to secure Bakhmut and the surrounding areas. Approximately 14 months after the initial mobilization, the Russian army established an extensive and formidable defense line in key areas such as Berdyansk, Melitopol, and along the left bank of the Dnipro River. These defensive positions were reinforced with units from the senior 22nd Army and the elite 1st Guard Army. Russia went to great lengths to set up military bases, airports, and supply routes in these regions. Despite these preparations, the Ukrainian invasion has proven to overwhelm these defenses. Just a month ago, the Ukrainian forces managed to breach the Russian army's initial defense line. Presently, they are advancing and crossing into the second line of defense. The advanced Leopard 2 and Challenger tanks, known for their exceptional armor and maneuverability, are creating secure corridors for Ukrainian infantry units within Berdyansk. Thanks to the precise artillery fire support from these Western tanks, the Ukrainian troops moving in from the land have effectively neutralized Russian soldiers along this direction. Essentially, as Ukrainian forces push forward from the border, they carry out reconnaissance and detection missions, with the British Challenger and German Leopard battle tanks taking a significant role in these actions. Berdyansk, once a stronghold of trust for Russia, experienced an unexpected lapse in its defenses. Despite President Putin's prior commendations, the city's defenses were nearly compromised due to the strategic utilization of Western tanks by the Ukrainian forces. Valery Shershin, the spokesperson for the Joint Press Office of the Torah Direction Defense Forces, highlights that the Ukrainian army's offensive in the south is intensifying by the day. Shershin also noted that the Ukrainian forces applied systematic pressure on specific sections of the front, managing to breach Russian defenses in the southern trenches and dismantle their positions. The presence of Western tanks in Ukraine's arsenal along the front lines, especially in locations like Berdyansk, Melitopol. Following intense battles, Ukrainian fighters successfully secured the high ground on the southern flank of the city. This critical development was reported firsthand by a soldier from the Armed Forces of Ukraine, who maintains a blog under the pseudonym Bach Devil. Bach Devil reported significant progress in the Andrika and Kordiva areas, located approximately 10 to 15 kilometers south of Bakhmut. On the same evening, the soldier confirmed their success, attributing it to their advantageous position on elevated terrain. They noted that they had gained control of the section of the Horka-Bakhmut highway, a vital route essential for resupplying the Russian Federation's occupation forces in the Bakhmut direction. Bakhmut had fallen under Russian control previously, but with the demise of Wagner leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, a power vacuum emerged among the enemy ranks. Ukrainian fighters seized this opportunity and launched a successful major offensive operation. The Ukrainian Defense Forces continue their offensive operations in both the Bakhmut and Melito directions. During the clashes in the Bakhmut area, Ukrainian fighters achieved significant gains, consolidating their positions along established lines. More than 10 settlements in the Donetsk region were adversely affected by enemy artillery shelling. Sari Charati, the spokesperson for the Eastern Group of the Armed Forces, reported that Ukrainian fighters in the Bakhmut position had eliminated 67 enemy soldiers. Over the course of the day, occupation forces bombarded Ukrainian positions in Bakhmut a total of 630 times, resulting in tense skirmishes between enemy forces and Ukrainian troops. The toll on the enemy side included 67 fatalities and 118 wounded, according to Tureva position reports. Apart from the Kinban Spit, which grants access to the Black Sea, and the crucial Kherson region, Ukrainian forces must also exert control over other strategic front lines like Melitopol and Tokmak to ensure the integrity of their ground attack corridor. In Melitopol, the Ukrainian armed forces previously executed an offensive targeting the main Russian military base area. Recent days have seen significant damage inflicted on this area due to ongoing Ukrainian offensive operations, particularly in Zaporizhia. This relentless assault on Russia's vital positions has left Moscow authorities and Russian forces incapable of defending Zaporizhia or obstructing the Ukrainian advance towards Crimea. Moreover, for Ukrainian forces to proceed towards Crimea, they must meticulously adhere to their current combat plan up until reaching Novototsk. Additionally, the Ukrainian administration should assert control over the Crimean border centers surrounding this city. A prime example is Armyansk, situated between the Crimean and Ukrainian borders, which stands as an ideal location to fulfill the principal objective of the Ukrainian armed forces. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia has entered a new and critical phase. The ramifications of Moscow's civil unrest are amplifying on the international stage. Ukrainian forces are decisively outmaneuvering the Russian army across all fronts, utilizing the most advanced weaponry at their disposal. Despite Russia's brief one-day civil conflict, its impact and severe consequences are far from fleeting. The Russian army and Prigozhin troops grappled for hours on the streets of Moscow, during which Prigozhin managed to break through the Moscow route, covering a distance of 200 kilometers. This development aligns with the actions of Belarusian President Lukashenko, who has been closely following the events in neighboring Russia. The ongoing dynamics are reshaping the geopolitical landscape and redefining the balance of power in the region. Russia has asserted that the ammunition seized included multiple armored personnel vehicles, a Krab self-propelled artillery unit, and another Krab self-propelled artillery unit. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Kosenkov maintained that Russian forces successfully repelled attacks by Ukraine's 82nd Air Assault Brigade and 46th Air Transport Brigade in the Zaporizhia region. However, these claims from the Kremlin have not yet been independently verified. Moving southward on the Ukrainian fronts, notable gains have been achieved. The Kyiv security services reported that Ukraine conducted a drone strike targeting a meeting of occupation authority officials in the Zaporizhia region. According to Kyiv, over 30 drones were shot down during this attack. The Security Service of Ukraine issued statements shedding light on the details of the strike. It was aimed at a gathering of heads of regional election commissions in the city of Kyiv, an evident and strategic target. The meeting intended to coordinate the distribution of ballots and voting booths, primarily attended by individuals associated with the Russian army's protection. The SBU, Security Service of Ukraine, skillfully disrupted the invaders' plans with the use of attack drones, employing various tactics and waves of attacks. While the exact outcomes are still under assessment, it is evident that numerous individuals suffered injuries. Officials emphasized that the successful strike by the SBU sends a clear signal to all collaborators that aligning with Russia poses significant risks to one's life and health. Additionally, the source provided an aerial view of the location where the strike took place, underscoring that the targeted building was intended for electoral purposes. Declaring war on Ukraine and the global community is an unfeasible course of action. Lukashenko foresaw Prigozhin's moves, given their shared history of involvement in challenging assignments in Africa and elsewhere. Moreover, Prigozhin's operation underscored a significant aspect: a substantial portion of Russia's armed forces, particularly those stationed in Ukraine, desired an end to the conflict and were no longer reliable. On the flip side, Prigozhin acknowledged that those who had betrayed him during the revolt, as well as the Kremlin figures he confronted, were unlikely to forgive him. It's evident that efforts will be made to exonerate both Prigozhin and Lukashenko, but the Kremlin's animosity towards them for causing embarrassment and humiliation will persist. Lukashenko's deception extended not only to Prigozhin but also to Putin. The agreement has placed Europe's three formidable figures in a precarious alliance. Putin, who had vowed to crush Prigozhin just hours prior to permitting his departure from the country, now finds himself living on the same border as his unpredictable adversary. The responsibility to manage this arrangement rests largely on Lukashenko, who holds a close relationship with Putin. The autocratic leader of Belarus, a staunch ally of Vladimir Putin, saw the insurrection as an opportunity to reshape his image and present himself as a statesman. This unusual turn of events positioned Belarus, firmly under Moscow's influence, as an unexpected winner in the aftermath of Prigozhin's revolt. It can be contended that Lukashenko is being credited with facilitating a deal between Putin and Prigozhin, who is now internationally isolated. Lukashenko aspires to leverage this. The exact location where the missile was intercepted has been kept confidential, and Ukraine has refrained from providing an official statement regarding the alleged incident. Following this attack, the occupying authorities heightened the terror alert level, implementing SIM, Security Information Management, measures for Apple airport operations, which were temporarily suspended. Russian anti-aircraft defenses successfully intercepted the missile during the attack, and subsequent investigations conducted by the police have indicated that there were no injuries resulting from the strike. After a period of relative tranquility, the assault on the city has disrupted the so-called authorities near the carriage bridge. Smoke billowed from the bridge following the strike, and it's worth noting that this bridge has endured at least 2 previous attacks in recent months. The Kerch Bridge, inaugurated in 2018, serves as a crucial supply route connecting Russia and Crimea, a Ukrainian peninsula annexed by Russia in 2014. It is imperative for the transportation of Russian troops occupying a section of southern Ukraine. In response to the S-200 missile attack, the partisan movement Atesh has reported an escalation in the oppression of Crimea's inhabitants by the occupiers. The so-called enemy authorities have intensified surveillance, particularly on railroad tracks, in their quest to identify Ukrainian nationalists. Under the relentless bombardment by Ukrainian soldiers, it is understandable that the adversary would be apprehensive in this region. Sergei Aksionov, Crimea's newly appointed Russian governor, claimed that a third rocket had been intercepted earlier over the Kerch Strait. 2 days prior to this attack, Russia reported that 20 Ukrainian drones had crashed in close proximity. An advisor to Aksionov alleged that the military had intentionally created a smoke screen, resulting in the cessation of traffic. Despite Kiev not explicitly acknowledging responsibility for the incident or the weaponry employed, according to the Ukrainian website Euromaidan Press, a bridge, along with 2 military sites in the Russian oblasts of Rostov and Bryansk, were purportedly targeted last month. It is important to note that no official confirmation regarding these attacks has been provided. The Ukrainian armed forces have effectively thwarted Russian attacks directed at Avdiivka and Marinka. Reports indicate that over 26 clashes occurred between Ukrainian and Russian troops in these regions. Despite the intensity of these encounters, the Russian forces failed to achieve their objectives, while the Ukrainian troops emerged from the attacks unscathed. Concurrently, Russian forces persisted in their efforts to push Ukrainian positions on various other fronts within the Donetsk region. Nonetheless, the Ukrainian forces effectively fended off all these assault attempts. An overview of the developments on the Ukrainian front lines reveals a significant toll on the Russian army. This toll is evident on both the southern and eastern fronts of Ukraine. Of notable importance is the recent confrontation in Kashivka, where Ukrainian forces managed to neutralize substantial numbers of Russian tanks. The precise count of Russian tanks and other armored vehicles destroyed or incapacitated during these clashes remains uncertain. Nevertheless, the Ukrainian General Staff recently disclosed that the Kremlin has incurred a staggering loss of 4,358 tanks since the onset of the conflict on February 24, 2022. In the past 24 hours alone, it is reported that Russia has lost an additional dozen tanks. According to data gathered by the Dutch open-source military intelligence site ORYX, Russia's main battle tank losses have surpassed 2,253 as of the previous Monday. However, these figures are exclusively based on visually confirmed losses, and experts believe that the actual number could be significantly higher. Moscow's losses in modern main battle tanks are so substantial that Russia has been compelled to rely on outdated Cold War-era tanks and vehicles, including. In response to the devastating attack by Ukrainian troops, the Russian counterattack depicted in the video was notably unsuccessful. Interestingly, throughout the entire video, no Russian soldiers or significant vehicle activity are visible. Only briefly do the Russian invaders appear to be armed with small arms. This video serves as a stark illustration of the challenges currently faced by Moscow's ground forces in their attempts to overcome the Ukrainian military. In the climactic sequence of the video, Ukrainian military vehicles are seen skillfully evading capture while simultaneously deploying anti-missile defense grenades. According to Hanna Melior, the Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, members of the Ukrainian armed forces were engaged in planned combat operations in Russia. Meanwhile, Russian forces struggled unsuccessfully to regain their positions with the aim of breaking through Russian military defenses and advancing toward their target, the city of Tokmak. The Ukrainian armed forces initiated this operation from Robotin, located at the southernmost point on the map. The tactical victories achieved by the Ukrainian armed forces in this situation have heightened Russian apprehension. With each success achieved by a Ukrainian warrior, the faith of Russian occupiers in their ability to prevail in this battle diminishes. There is also positive news from the Bakhmut neighborhood. Ukrainian forces have liberated a substantial 43 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory in the Bakhmut region from Russian control. The southern flank, particularly in the vicinity of Bakhmut, is clearly making progress. Ukrainian fighters have effectively held back the Russian forces, regaining the upper hand to the north of Bakhmut. In this area, Ukrainian fighters and enemy forces are engaged in intense close combat, with the Ukrainian armed forces determined to maintain their positions. In reality, Bakhmut remains firmly under the control of the adversaries, as long as the Ukrainian armed forces remain in place. Furthermore, the opposition is actively working to encircle Divka, with Ukrainian soldiers persistently defending their positions.